Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound, brought to you by saas.group. I'm your host, and Dana, and this is the show where we chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business success. Today with me is Sarah Hum, founder and designer at Canny, helping SaaS companies build greater products by being better at listening to and acting on user feedback. Canny's growing steadily with over 3 million ARR and 13 remote employees. Do I have my numbers right? That's pretty impressive.
I think we're 16 now.
Okay. All right. Like I said,
Wait.
growing steadily. Good to see you here, Sarah.
Thank you for having me, Anna.
All right. Well, super exciting, really, for me, because recently we've introduced at SaaS Group our new big vision and how we are no longer solely focused on bootstrap companies, but it's the bootstrapper mindset or mentality that we're looking for. And I was reading through your blog and everything you put out there, and I was like, well, that's just perfect. This is the best case scenario that we can do like this episode. So yeah, that's what I want to emphasize on, I guess, your bootstrapping journey, because you're very focused on generating revenue from, well, basically day one, right? You did everything well by the bootstrapper book, right? You validated early, you listened to your customers, and you focused on the revenue. So before we get to it, maybe let's talk about your background a little bit.
Yeah. How far should I go back?
Well,
I
how did you come up with Kenny in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, so I've always been a product person. I always will be a product person. My co-founder is a software engineer, so we're both just in us is product. And when we were thinking about, working on things, we've worked on things before Canny together, just kind of as side projects. We use a lot of products on a day-to-day basis. And at some point we were like, okay, we feel like these products could be better. Right. And these were very consumer products, back then we were thinking like, oh, like the Yelps and the Ubers of the day, like how can those products be better? How can we make our lives as users better? And we want to give them feedback, like I feel like
Sure.
Yelp could be better in this way. And there wasn't really a good way to give that. If anything, there was like an email link or a support link, but then that's very supporty and it never gets to the product team, or they say, okay, thanks for the feedback. I'll pass that on to our team, but then nothing happens and there's no follow up. And so that's really where the Canny idea started. And that's the problem that we're trying to solve, which is something that is kind of selfish, right? Like, it's like if other teams use Canny and I can get my feedback to them and me as a product person can be heard, I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
It's still like the magic moment for me is when I'm using Canny and one of our customers' products and I give them feedback via Canny and I get an update about a feature that I want. That is like a light bulb for me and something that I want to be able to give other companies. And so yeah.
Right. So that's the aha
from.
moment that you're creating for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me as a user, there's a spark there, right? It's like, oh,
Right.
I gave them feedback and they listened.
Listen?
That's really cool.
Yeah. Oh no, I remember, I guess, when I replied to like this founder email and I got a feedback and I was like, wait, what's happening? Like, is he really there? I just wanted
Yeah.
to like peek behind the curtain, like
Right.
who's that person that's
Right.
answering? So I
Right.
guess that's a great thing to
Yeah,
play
it
with.
does humanize the product a little bit, right? Like it brings you closer to the people who are actually building these tools that you're using on a day-to-day basis, which is really cool, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I know a few people that use Kenny and they're super happy with it. And you started talking about Yelp, and I was like, I just interviewed this the principal designer of Yelp, and he was also talking about Kenny.
Nice.
So you're like, everything is connected.
Wait,
So
really? Wait, that's so cool.
yeah. Right? Yeah, it's such a great network of founders.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, okay. Well, how did you go? Well, it was maybe a selfish reason, but you knew that other companies, that other people, other customers are struggling with it.
Yeah.
So how did you go from
Yeah.
your selfish reasons to selling it to other people?
Yeah. Yeah, well, as we did more research, right, like I think we learned that it's not that they don't care, because that's a hard problem, right? Especially if you're a Yelp and you have so many users. And I think that's kind of where we, like, once we did more research and learned about the market, consumer is hard, right? You're talking about way more users, and a lot of the users are not paying customers. And so it's hard to tell, who should be a priority, stuff like that. Whereas in the B2B space, everyone is paying, well, most people are paying you in order to solve a problem. And when
Yeah,
those people who are paying you are giving you feedback, it's important for you to listen. It's important for you to at least hear them, maybe not prioritize what they're asking for, but it's important for you to know what people are saying and be able to say, okay, this is something we've heard a lot. We should look into it, maybe not build the exact solution that they're asking for, but really understand what is the root problem. Um, and so we dove straight into B2B. Um, I think we built a very basic version of the product, and people said they would pay for it, which I think is like that's the spark really,
yeah,
is like, okay, if they're willing to pay you, then you are solving a problem, right? Like the money is really indicative of that. Um, and so that just made sense with us, right? It's like, okay, well, we need money in order to live, in order to sustain our lives outside
yeah,
of working a full-time job. But then also it's really a good signal that you're on to something, right? Like once multiple people are paying you for the same product, like there's something there, like follow that. So yeah, I think we did some research. We kind of learned the market and understood like what people are struggling with, what their problems are, especially within the feedback space, because that's where we were sitting. And then from there, build what they're asking for, like build what will help them in their day-to-day lives as, someone who works on a B2B SaaS product.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I know that now you're using Kenny to build Kenny,
Of course.
but but back then when it was a bit more basic, what
Yeah.
did you use? How did you communicate with your customers? How did you prioritize
Yeah.
what is going to be built for Kenny?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we tried to use Candy as much as possible from day one. A
Okay.
lot of the features, even that we build today, are like, oh, I would want to use that. Like, can we prioritize this? Which, is probably not the best thing. I mean, ideally, we prioritize what our majority of customers are asking for, especially the ones that are, our ideal customer profile, right? Um, a lot of time, like we have a free plan. So a lot of times if a feature has a lot of interest, but it's only free users, then it's something to think about, right? So it's a lot about who's asking for the thing and on top of what they're asking for. But yeah, from day one, I feel like we tried to use Canny as much as possible. Like that's the way that, like we are kind of our target customer, like the product person. So by using Canny ourselves, it's like, okay, this is how we can improve the product as well. So we tried to track everything in there ourselves. I think back in the earlier days, like it would be a lot more like one-to-one customer conversations, like more interviews and stuff. And as we've grown, we've been doing less of that, sadly, but we can still do it, right? Like that's not really an excuse. I think we should totally be doing those more as much as possible. So yeah, we pretty much use Candy from day one. And I think that's a nice thing about MVP is like
Yeah.
you have what's crucial, right? And so we should be able to
Okay.
use it. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, well, yeah, sure. Exactly. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we talk here a lot about talking to your customers, how
Mm-hmm.
it's a priority, how you should always be doing this, how you just said, we should be doing it more. If we
Mm-hmm.
scale, come back a little bit, right, as founders and like get a sense of when the aha moment comes, but we rarely talk about the prioritization of customers we should be listening to. So let's
Mm.
dig a little bit deeper into that. Like, obviously,
Yeah.
everyone says talk to your customers and talk to all of your customers if possible. That's like a best
Mm-hmm.
case scenario ever. But, well, obviously, you are there to get the revenue, right? So you should be
Mm-hmm.
talking to, well, you say to whom?
Yeah. Yeah. I think like not all customers are created equal, right? I mean, in the early days, it's like really honing in on your ideal customer profile. Like, who is this person? Who can we build a product for that solves a problem for like a wide number of people, but also be focused. So it's like a little conflicting, right? But I mean, in the early days, we were like, okay, let's build feedback for anybody and anything. And then, by doing research, it's like, okay, the people who would benefit most from this could be product, right? And that's
Yeah.
where a lot of the feedback thrives and where we see products iterating, right? As SaaS tools, we ship new things all the time, right? And so those things can happen quickly. So we hone in on the product teams and anybody who is related to product. But yeah, from there, like for now, like when it comes to prioritization for me, it's looking at who is asking for these things, right? It doesn't matter if 100 people are asking for something if I don't care about those 100 people. Sorry, but like not everybody is a customer I care about. And a lot of that,
Right.
like a lot of that signal comes from, are they paying or not, right? Like I want to build features that our paying customers want, right? Because they're the ones getting the most value out of the product. They're the ones willing to pay a monthly fee in order for this problem to be solved. And that problem can always be solved better. We can always build more and more for them. So it's really about looking at who's asking for these things. How much are they paying? Are they really engaged? Are they like our ideal persona? Stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, and luckily, like we've built Canny in a way that's easy to see that. So it's easy to see, okay, here's all the people that are paying. Here's, the companies that they work at. Here's their role at the company, stuff like that. So all those important pieces of information. And so if anybody's collecting feedback, I will always support this. It's very important to know who it's coming from. If it's just a piece of feedback, I don't really care, honestly. If it's just like
Right.
I have no identity associated with it, then it's not useful, and it's not something where I can continue to prompt them and be like, okay, you told me this. Can you elaborate on all this other stuff related to that so I can get more information? It's really important to be able to follow through on that and know
Okay.
exactly where it's coming from.
Right. Okay. So know where the feedback is coming from, who's talking to you, and just build from
Mm-hmm.
there. Okay. So while you were talking, I was thinking that you're so focused on the product teams and the product people,
Mm-hmm.
and has that changed over the years? Have you evolved your messaging? Because again, this is a topic that often comes during the
Yeah.
podcast. We kind of well, there is a fine line between selling to people who buy the product and selling to people who use
Mm-hmm.
the product. So
Yes.
how
Yeah.
did you refine your messaging based on that?
Yeah. I think for us, the end user, the end benefit was always for the product team. But there's a lot of people who touch product in a way. So these people are particularly customer facing people, right? So support people, sales people, success people, these are all people who are on the front lines talking to customers, and they're the ones often getting the feedback directly. So a lot of times these are the people who are actually in Canny, adding feedback, checking things. And so that I think is something that we've tried to uh, show how we give those people value, right? Like, for example, as a salesperson, you know, you're getting feature requests all the time. Like, oh, I'm a potential customer. Do you have this XYZ feature? And a lot of times, the answer is no, not yet. Like, I don't have that feature yet. But ideally, as a sales team, you should be able to give product, all this information. Hey, this deal is worth X dollars.
Absolutely.
And if we build ABC features, they may sign, right? And so that's really important for product to know. Like, if you're looking to expand revenue, expand, in terms of how much revenue you're making, that's really important information, right? And then on the flip side, if you're talking to success or support, and your existing customers are saying, hey, I want A, B, and C, like this could save churn, right? Like if people are missing certain
Yeah.
features and they can express how important features are to them, it's a way to do that. And so yeah, I think for now we're not great at marketing to these people. I feel we do have some like best practice blog posts, stuff like that, where these adjacent roles can learn about Canny and how to use it and how it benefits them. But I think we could do a better job in terms of like our landing pages and stuff like that, which we're trying to do slow and steadily, like shift a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's still product that benefits, right? But then the side benefits are it flows to other teams, which is exciting and great because they're the ones talking to customers, and we want customers to feel heard. So
Absolutely.
yeah, we're not great at it,
Yeah,
but
so
yes,
there is
it's on
your
the
ideal
mind.
customer, but whoever is,
Yeah.
whoever goes with the
Yeah.
current, they're
Absolutely.
welcome.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. All right. So you talk a lot about pricing too, and I found like
Hmm.
it's such an important topic, especially this year,
Yeah.
because everyone's
Yeah.
freaking out like what to do. We've
Yeah.
changed our pricing quite a bit this
Okay.
year for a few
Yeah.
brands, and sure, we were freaking out as well, like just looking at those graphs and charts, like what is
Yeah.
happening? Are we
Yeah.
are we there yet? Did we make it? So
Yeah.
how do you experiment with that? Because that's also something
Yeah.
that we absolutely love
Yeah.
for bootstrapper mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
Right? You test, you iterate, you see how it goes. So how did you decide? Because I know that last year, right, you changed your pricing 4 times.
Yeah.
How did you decide to do that? Like why? How did it work for you? What are
Yeah.
the learnings there?
Yeah. So that blog post you're talking about, the 4 pricing changes, that was actually in our first year. So
Okay.
that's something that we did. I don't we were so much like pricing changes were so much easier back then because it didn't impact as many people. So we could experiment a lot more. And now, so we did a pricing change early this year. Yes, early. Oh my gosh, is it 2023? Early this year.
Too long already.
And wait, I think
Well, this
it
year
was
is tough.
within the
I
last
understand.
12. What a blur. And it's so much harder now to change pricing, but I would encourage anybody who can do it to do it. And I think for us, like we are still quite a small team. It still takes us a lot of energy and takes a lot of people in order to make a pricing change happen. But if you are more agile and more able to move, like change it all the time. I don't know. In our first year, because it was just two of us, it was me and Andrew. We were able to just say, okay, we learned this from this change. Let's change that in this one. It was like one of the pricing changes we changed in a day, right? And now it takes
Okay.
months, right? It takes a lot more energy, a lot more time in order to change, because we have to think a lot more about the impacts on existing customers, stuff like that. So it's just harder. But I would recommend doing it as much as possible and learning from it, because that's it could make such a big change in terms of how much you're making, and what you're being able to capture in terms of value from your customers. So yeah, do it a lot more. I think for us, like in the first year, it was so much easier, and we were able to learn a lot from that. And I wish we could do the same, but it's not as easy now. So
Okay.
yeah.
So, like for example, what we see in the market is
Yeah.
that new wins are a little bit slower, but the
Yeah.
retention is kind of there. The renewing contracts are there.
Yeah.
Your existing customers are not really moving because they don't want to try
Yeah.
anything new. They want to stay with you. So,
Yeah.
what is
Yeah.
your experience with it when you
Yeah. I mean,
change
I think,
prices this year, especially?
yeah, like this year, it seems like, retention isn't very important. I think for at least what we're experiencing, it feels like a lot of people are being very intentional about their spend, and people are tightening budgets a lot. We've seen layoffs left and right. And so layoffs mean that that people are thinking about their money, and that often bleeds into product, right? Like, what products can we cut? And sadly, Canny is in there a lot of times, because if you don't listen to your customers, you're not going to die. It's not great, but you're not going to die overnight, right? Like shutting down your servers, for example. So we've seen that. And for us, it's really about trying to communicate that if you want to continue existing as a product, it's important for you to listen to your customers. And you can do that in, other ways. Like, people might default back to like a spreadsheet, for example. But if you're at a point where you have a significant number of customers, that's tricky. But at the same time, we also released our free plan in the last year. So
Yeah.
this makes it a lot more accessible to other companies, and especially early stage companies who don't have that budget to spend. So we're happy we're able to do that, right? We're happy we're able to enable people to listen to their customers at a free price. And then people who are experiencing, more volume and more need for, understanding that data and understanding, volume, they can upgrade to our paid plans. So it's interesting. I think we released the free plan at a very interesting time because it's unclear if it's market changes or the pricing change, or probably both, that really
Yeah.
impact our growth in the last year. So it's interesting. I mean, it's hard to tell, and we can assume and guess as much as we can, but it's interesting. I feel like it's still, like, in terms of our total number of customers and people who are using Canny, it's obviously grown with the free plan. So that's
Mhm.
exciting. It's just, yeah, it's an unsure time, I feel like, for us and probably a lot of other people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everyone's kind of
Yeah.
like just holding their breath, like what's next? Is
Yeah.
it getting better?
Yeah.
Is it
Right.
is it getting
Right.
steadier or like can we
Right.
release a little bit? Yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like, in our early days it was like slow and steady growth, and it was like, okay, we don't have to try that
Good
hard,
enough.
and we just grow. And now it's like, okay, we really need to hone in on, what are the needle movers? What should we focus on? I think it's a good challenge at the end of the day. Like, startups aren't easy, and yeah, it shouldn't be easy. So yeah, we're just trying to hone in on what those things are.
Okay. All right. Well, but over the years, like how has your growth strategy changed and how has your marketing
Yeah.
changed? What are you focusing on right now?
Yeah, I mean, over the last several years, we've been slowly moving upstream. So serving bigger and bigger customers. I think that's a natural progression in terms of especially B2B SaaS, like going up and trying to solve
Absolutely.
problems for bigger companies. And so we're still in the process of doing that, I would say. Like, we're not, there's definitely many features that we're missing for the higher tiers. And these are people who are, care a lot about compliance and stuff like that, the smaller companies don't care anything about. And so I think that's why the free plan is a cool solution for us. Is, they can use that self-service, like, do whatever you want, use the tool as much as you want, and then when you're ready you can upgrade. And so that has been interesting. We're still really monitoring that and understanding how good the free plan is for us. And I think when it comes to pricing changes now, it's kind of about what features should be packaged where, like, should this be in our free plan, should this be in our paid plans. And then I think for us also, like, the AI stuff that's coming out that you see a lot in other companies, it's something that we have our ears, we're listening and trying to see what people are interested in. And I think when it comes to AI, it's not about, using the AI term as this buzzword as like, oh yeah, we have AI
Yeah.
too. It's really like, how can we leverage AI to give our customers more value? And so trying to explore that and seeing how that fits into our offering. But yeah, I think when it comes to growth, it's like, okay, continue, investing in the companies that have shown that we can provide them value in terms of, how much they're paying us, right? If they're paying us, we're giving them value. And so how can we offer them more, and what are they asking for? So I think that is a similar strategy moving forward. But then when it comes to new stuff, it's like, okay, AI is more accessible, is more, people are able to understand it better. How can we use it to give them more value? And in turn, we'll introduce that in our pricing as well, right? Like, we don't know how we're going to package it right now, but it's something that can offer more value.
Okay. Sure. So let's talk about packaging a little bit because you introduced this new
Yeah.
free plan. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
how generous did you decide to be with it, and how did you
Yeah.
prioritize the features that this unpaid customers could use?
Yeah.
What you're giving
Yeah.
them? Is there any playbook that you're using, or you're just like throwing something in there to make sure there is
Yeah.
value, there's enough value to use it well
Yeah.
and use it well, but then
Right.
there's just a little bit more that they could be getting with the paid plan? Or
Yeah. Yeah. I would say in general, we don't follow many playbooks, I guess. But I think for us, like, we had built Canny for a while. Like we knew kind of what our baseline features were, what people need at a minimum in order to be successful with collecting feedback, right? And so that was kind of our idea, is like, okay, looking at startups, early stage companies, people who don't have crazy amounts of feedback, but they want to start tracking it. So we're able to identify pretty easily like what those features were. But at the same time, I think in terms of generosity, I think we were pretty generous. I think, what's the point of a free plan if nobody's going to use it? So you do need to make it generous enough that it's still a useful product on its own. And it's not this broken thing because they have to upgrade
Absolutely.
in order to use it. And so it's really like trying to fine tune, okay, how many of XYZ feature do they need? We can limit it that way versus in terms of just features alone. So, giving them the taste of a feature and how the feature works, but then not giving them more of it unless you upgrade, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
For
sure.
example, like, a term in Canny is a roadmap, right? Like when you are a small company, you probably only need one roadmap. You can figure it out. But if you're a bigger team and you have multiple PMs and, a lot of stuff is going on, you probably need more than one. So that's kind of where we try to draw the line in a few ways. Whereas like the core features of Canny are available and free. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's perfect, but I think that's how we approached it, and that's how we packaged our free plan. But it's also nothing's like permanent, right? You can always change it if you
Yeah.
release it and you're like, okay, this is not generous enough. Let's up this a little bit, and this is too much. Let's lower this, right? Like it's always something you can tweak. So yeah, I wouldn't let that, like the fear of that, hold you back from doing a pricing change. Like just do
Mhm.
it and try it and see how people react. And you can always, adjust. It's SaaS. You can adjust pretty
Yeah.
easily.
Sure. Test and play with it. Iterate.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think it's more difficult to do that for B2B? Like, do you have to have like longer period to like let people know and adjust to the new
Yeah.
pricing? Are they,
Yeah.
harder to, I don't know, to navigate this?
Yeah.
How do they react to like more frequent pricing changes?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I mean, there's always going to be that customer base that's like, whoa, like, what, really? You're doing this? Like, and like, you're always going to get those
Shock.
people, and it's totally okay. Yeah, like, I think if we made a decision to change the pricing again in the next day, the day after we released it, like, that's when people are most they're most reactive. So it really takes time to like settle down and like see, okay, what are new customers thinking? Like, are new customers reacting to the pricing? Because for them, that's the pricing. They never knew the old pricing. And so it takes time for us to look at how they're feeling. And then with existing customers, yeah, it's damage control in some ways, right? Like they were paying X price, and like
So no
we made the
grandfather.
mistake. Yeah, I mean, I think we made the mistake of not changing our pricing in like years, right? And so these people were so used to paying that old price that, you know, any pricing change is crazy. Whereas if we had slowly done it over time, right? It maybe not wouldn't have been such a, I mean, it's hard to tell for sure, but it may not have been such a, whoa, this is a crazy, crazy change. So yeah, I think if we could go back, we would do a little more incrementally and make more changes. But we just, startups, you get busy and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
hard to prioritize a pricing change. So yeah. And I think, yeah, when it comes to just having those conversations, like, you're a person, like talk to them. I think we try
Mhm.
to give good notice. You can always give more notice. I mean, it's hard. We wanted to make the change, as fast as possible, but we also want to give notice. So yeah, we gave about a month of notice, and I feel like it was okay. Like we could, I think next time we would maybe try to give two. But I
Mhm.
think that's a good amount. And then even till now, like a year later, it's like, okay, how are we doing with the pricing? We're probably going to be starting to think about another change soon.
Okay, that's a good announcement. That's
Yeah,
just like here's
it's
your
hard to say, right? Like,
yeah. We told
yeah,
you.
here's your warning.
Told you on the podcast. Yeah,
But
should have known.
it's also like
It's
it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think like maybe we did too big of a jump. right? Like maybe we excluded some people from the last pricing change. And so it's totally possible that we're going to shift things around. People could be paying less than they are right now. People could be paying more, obviously. So we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. All right. Maybe next year we do another podcast and let's just see what what
Exactly.
you
There
did
you
with your
go.
pricing, what you learned.
Follow up.
Yeah, right. Okay, so that was more on the focus on the revenue and like the whole
Hmm.
bootstrapping growth. Another thing that also we're very passionate about is the culture, the hiring, the team.
Yeah.
Well, you're
Yeah.
hiring more these days, right? So, what is your hack to hire? Because, well, you started smaller, right? You did your first
Yeah.
hires when, as far as
Yeah.
I remember, you hit like 250 ARR, something like that.
Maybe something, maybe a little less, but yeah, it took
Okay.
us a while to start hiring. We never
Yeah.
wanted to raise,
S-
right? So we needed to get to a point where you could afford people. Yeah, it took some time.
Yeah, but still, like, okay, let's assume it was 250. That's
Yeah.
kind of like a base salary for a Silicon Valley developer, right? So how do you sorry, well, I had to say that. How do you attract talent when
Yeah.
you have a smaller ARR?
Yeah.
What was your hack? I mean, now obviously you've grown.
Yeah.
What was your hack back then? How do you
Yeah.
attract talent, the best talent, you know,
Yeah.
you want them maybe to, I don't know, get out of Silicon Valley,
Yeah.
join
Yeah.
the cool kids.
Yeah.
How, how
It's
are
not
you doing that?
easy. It's not easy, I will say, because we come from the valley too. Like we know what those salaries are like, and what
Right.
good talent can make. And so, well, our first hire was not a Silicon Valley engineer, but our first hire, like in terms of how we approach hiring, like our first hire was support. And so for us, it was like, okay, we are product people. We should do product as much as possible. And what was really making that hard for us in the early days is customers. And that's sorry, like I don't we always want to talk to our customers, obviously, but for us, when it comes to context switching, and we have to answer a support conversation at any time of the day, it was hard. And so we brought someone on for that as a first hire. But soon after that, we wanted to expand our engineering team, and our engineering team to this day is like half the company. So it's very important to us that we continue improving the product on a day-to-day basis. And I think for engineering, well, one thing that helps is that we are remote, right? And so we have that flexibility. You can work from wherever you want. Pretty much. We still are not hiring from like Asia and stuff that's really far. It's just time zones are impossible. Like people who want that flexibility, who want to live in a place where they aren't offered that, that really helped pre-COVID, right? Like we were remote pre-COVID, and so this work from home thing was less prominent and less common for people. So people who wanted that flexibility, we could offer that to them. I think that was huge. And the other thing is the equity piece. I think for us, we want to give Canny to the people that are working on Canny, right? Like if you work with us and you put in your effort here, we want to pay back in terms of how well the company is doing. We want you to have a piece of that. And so because we don't have investors, we are able to be more generous in terms of how much equity we are able to offer. I think that's compelling, right? I think it's compelling for people who,
Absolutely.
first of all, like startups. And I think that's like baseline. If they don't like startups, there's no place, right? But for them, it's compelling for you to be able to have a slice of the thing that you're working on and something that gains value over time. And even people who have left the company, right? Like they still have a piece of us, and their work will live in Canny as we continue to exist. So I think that's huge. And then also, I mean, I think as a company, like I think we offer things that Silicon Valley can't, right? You have that remote work, but then you also, I feel like our work-life balance here is like really good. Like when people talk about startups, like, oh yeah, I work 80 hours a week, da da da. And I don't think I've never worked 80 hours a week. And I don't think that's
No,
healthy
that's
for
too
anyone.
much.
So like we don't encourage that for anyone. But yeah, I think, the culture that we offer here, and in the early days is much harder, right? Like we really need to convince people of our vision and stuff like that. But now it's a little easier, like our team speaks highly of us At least I hope so. And so it's easier to convince people like we have something going on. We clearly have proven that we are able to make a good amount of money from what we do. We have team retreats. We go on a retreat twice a year. We took people to Japan in May. Like it's a cool thing, right? And it's something that even
Awesome.
you probably can't get in a lot of Silicon Valley startups, right? So yeah, I think we pay a lot of attention to that, but we also try to pay as well as possible, right? Like at the bottom, at the end of the
Mhm.
day, like people are trying to make a salary and they compare their salary to other places. And yeah, we're not paying like top tier, but we're also not like
Mhm.
cheaping out, I would say. Like we're still paying as
Mhm.
competitively as we can. You get what you paid for, right? And so like, yeah, we
Yeah.
try to give as much as we can.
Awesome. I think that's a great strategy. I mean, it's kind of been like throughout this podcast. Like
Mm-hmm.
in the end, I will ask you the same question, like what is the biggest win and the biggest failure? And everyone says the biggest win
Sure.
is the team and like the people that they're working
Yes.
with and like what they're
Yeah.
what they want um
Yeah.
to do together and what they're able to put out there in terms of like product and everything. But
Yeah.
I also know you because you mentioned culture. And I think it was on one of the podcasts or maybe a blog post
Mhm.
that you did. But you said that you were trying to create a more of a like hangout situation during the interview. So
Yeah.
very, very casual. So what could be the
Yeah.
question like this in this hangout kind of narrative that
Yeah.
people are getting during the interview? Can you share it?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that the most hangout part of our interview process is the last interview, which is technically our culture interview, whatever you want to call it, but it's the candidate and three people from our team. So it's really just like a how do we get along? Because you can, if you've done interviews, you can feel it. You can feel whether someone is somebody that you want to work with, is somebody that would fit in well with your team, would have something to add to the team, even. So yeah, I think it's just hanging out, spending time together, and really, I think the questions we ask in there are just like, what do you do for fun, right? Like what, like who are you as a person, like beyond your marketing skills or your engineering skills, whatever. We've already tested for that. You've already passed those interviews here. Okay, who are you as a person? And one of the questions I like to ask is, if I talk to your three best friends, what would they say about you? And it
Oh,
could be
that's
something
good.
like, okay, what would they say about me, right? Like you're not trying to brag about yourself, but also like
Hmm.
what do you think you put out there? What do you think you put out into your friend groups and you know people who are outside of work, right? So yeah, I think that's a fun question. I think yeah, it's just really getting to know the person. It's not a hard interview, but it's an interview that a lot of people don't make it past because we are very picky about who we work with, right? Like this is someone who is going to be a long-term member of the team. They need to be a big addition, right? And so it's important for us to have that interview. And we also like have a sense for that in the technical interviews early on. But yeah, it's important for us to understand if you would fit in with cross-functionally, even people that you wouldn't necessarily work directly with here. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, yeah, sure. Absolutely. No, I love it. I think it's a great way to like definitely feel how a person is going to integrate into a bigger
Yeah,
team. Well, you're
absolutely.
not that big yet, but still, right?
Yeah,
It's even more important then because you work together one way or another. So I
yeah,
think that's great.
yeah. And I think that the retreats are huge for that too. Is there's, I mean, remote work is great. I love remote work. I've been doing it for over 6 years. But there's something about being face to face, right? And so that's why we have those two retreats a year, is to be face to face and have lunch, have real lunch with the person, a person that you've worked with, right? And so we're continuing to invest in that because we feel like it's so important, and it really makes our product better at the end of the day for us to be able to work together better.
Completely agree. I mean, we had our own retreat like a couple of weeks ago. We were,
Nice,
well, around
amazing.
200 people though, but but it
Yeah,
was still like
it's
such a
harder
sense
then.
of unity. Yeah, right? And like we're
Yes.
separate brands because like we're standalone companies, but still like we know each other. We see each other on Slack.
Yeah,
We know what people
exactly.
are working on, and like to see them well, the person that's sitting behind the screen, like how many, oh my god, I didn't know how tall you were.
Yeah.
So stuff like that, it's just yeah, I think it's super important. I
Yes.
mean, I'm kind of remote native, but
Yeah.
I love meeting people in person.
Right.
It just
Right.
adds so much.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
And just hanging
but
out, right?
Japan,
Like
good
after
choice.
work, what do you do? What do you do after work? Like, when it's remote,
Yeah,
at the end of your workday, you're gone. But when it's a
yeah,
retreat, and our retreats are like a week long, so it's a big opportunity to just hang out and get to know each other, which is really cool to see. Like it's cool to see like the people
yeah,
that we brought together interacting with each other. Like I think that's pretty cool.
yeah. Sounds great. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, just a couple more questions. And
Yeah.
first one, can you share a hack that helps you grow Canny or grow your team, or maybe
Yeah.
just personally grow as a leader
Yeah.
because the company grows and you're
Yeah.
scaling? You're probably not the same
Yeah.
as you
Yeah.
were at the beginning. So, what has been your hack for sustainable scaling, sustainable growing?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we're always very slow and intentional. So that's kind of just like it has a sustainability built in because we don't hire someone unless we need them. We don't have like because we don't have haven't raised money and stuff like that. It's like we don't have just like money just lying around just to throw at any problem. And so if we really need someone, we hire them, right? And so it's sustainable in that way. I can't imagine ever having like when I joined Facebook, Meta, there were, and this was a long time ago, there were probably 8 other people at the same time that I was, joining as a designer specifically. I can't even imagine how many engineers were joining at the same time, same day,
Oh
same time.
yeah,
Like here, like I can't imagine even more than one person joining at one time, just like and being able to dedicate, this is your week, this is your first week. We are all here to help you. And so I think that's just being slow is more sustainable, I feel. And they just, I feel like, I hope anyway, that they feel more secure and more able to ask questions and stuff like that. So hopefully their onboarding experience in terms of as an employee is good. When it comes to the interviewing process, for me, and interviewing is very time consuming, right? Like you talk to a lot of candidates. We're talking to hundreds of people for one role. And so for us, a big important piece for every interview is that kind of take home or like live skill assessment. And we do this for every skill, even if it's not engineering is clear, right? Like you have an engineering problem. But when it comes to success or, something that's more customer facing, it's harder to do a take home or a live assessment, but you can make it work. Right. And I think that's really important. It's an opportunity for you to see them, in their environment and their actual skills. And then it's also an opportunity for you to give them feedback. Right. I think for us, if you can't take feedback as a person, it's like a dead end, right? Like I can't help you improve if you're not willing to listen to feedback. So yes, we are a
right.
feedback company, but there's also feedback in terms of you as a person, you as a skilled person.
Mhm.
So being able to give them feedback in that interview, I feel like is so crucial just to see like how they react to you giving them feedback. Um, and so I think that's really important. But yeah,
Are
I think
you
that's the
being ever intentionally harsh with people, just like to see how they uh, crack or not?
Yeah, I don't I don't think so. Like for the most part, people who at least make it to that stage are already like decent. And no, like I'm not trying to crack them. Like people who might have a reason for me to be harsh are people that we probably don't hire at the end of the day. Um, so it's yeah, I think when it comes to it could be anything. It could be like communication. It could be, hey, I think you could be more concise in how you answer questions. I think that's huge for me because if you are just like a verbose person when it comes to working together, that's too much for me. Like I need, let's go, I need like short and snappy and let's get to the point communication. And so sometimes I give that feedback in interviews is okay, you know, you could be more concise in communication. Please, keep that in mind for your next interview and see if they do anything,
Okay.
right? Like see if they take that feedback to heart. So yeah, I think that's important.
No,
A little bit of a hack.
absolutely. I
I think
mean,
like do it. Yeah.
Sure. Well, definitely works for you. I mean, you're growing. Everyone seems happy, right?
I
Everyone
hope so.
speaks highly of Kenny.
Thank you.
um, all right, and yeah, the question that I already told you about
Yeah.
is your biggest win and the biggest failure. Can be
Yeah.
your personal again as a leader.
Yeah.
What you think you
Yeah.
did good, or maybe not so good,
Yeah.
or maybe for Kenny.
Yeah. I mean, okay, like I have to say the team, right? Like I have that like I if I talk to myself, back when we were two people and told myself that we would be where we are today, I don't know if I would believe it. Right? Like it's weird that we've brought together this like cool group of people, like these really talented people, people that could work anywhere else, really. Like they could work anywhere else, but they choose to work here. I think that's really, really cool, and I hope we're able to continue doing that. I'm excited to keep doing that. But at the same time, I feel like our failure is kind of related. Like for me, I'm still technically a first-time manager. I was never a manager at Facebook, so I'm still learning as a manager every day. It's hard. I think for me, like I'm a designer. When it comes to design or product stuff like that, it's easy, right? It's just like there's a clear solution. There's like you just maybe there are a couple options. You just pick and you go with
Yeah,
it. When it comes
couple
to
of
people,
clicks. There you go.
it's such a ooh, like anybody could be wanted to be managed in a different way. People have different communication styles. People, it's just so much more challenging. And I think not everyone is made to be a manager.
I like that people.
Yeah, it's
That
just
was just so true. Like people. Oh
I don't know. It's
no,
like
they
you never
can
know
be. I agree.
for sure.
Okay.
You never know for sure. It's
Yeah.
not like this is a math problem. Like I can solve this. This is like you got to navigate, and like I never want to get to a place where we have like this weird politics or anything like that. Like big companies kind of just have. Like I want people to be able to talk to me, right? Like I want people to feel like they could say anything, and I think not everyone is made to be a manager, which is interesting. And understanding that and understanding as we grow, should there be people who are managers, or should they be just ICs and we should keep them doing what they're great at? I asked that about myself. Like, am I a good manager? I'm not sure. And so that's why it's always like another feedback opportunity, right? It's like, okay, like give me feedback, like give me harsh feedback, right? Like I think people are like, okay, this is the boss. Like I don't want to get, I don't want to, be harsh or negative. But I'm like
Yeah.
that's the only way that I'm going to be able to make your life better is if you tell me how to be better. Um, so
We
yeah,
need Kenny for
that's still
people.
like yeah, it's still TBD for me. Like, am I a good manager? Am I suited to be a manager moving forward? Maybe, maybe not, right? And I need to be realistic with myself for that too. And I think there's like that shows in some of the failures that we've had in the past where, hiring hasn't worked out and it's not always going to work out, right? Like stuff is going to happen, but we could always do better. Like I don't want to feel like I failed people on the team, even if, we split paths. Um, I want to do what I can to make to see if we can make it work. But at the same time, like I need to do what's best for the company. I need to do what's best for the rest of the team. And so, like I'm still learning about that, and I feel like there are situations in the past where we could have done better. But these are always learning opportunities, right? And at the end of the day, like you make mistakes, and I think that's a nice thing about bootstrapping. Also, is like I don't need to tell any investor that we failed. Like it's always just up to us, and that's okay. Like I want to make it okay for anybody else on the team to make mistakes. Like make the mistake once, don't make it again, you know? And so like we're trying to do that. We're trying to hold
Easy.
ourselves to that too. Yeah, no, it's not easy, but especially when it comes to hiring and other people are involved and feelings are involved and livelihoods are involved, it's really, really hard. But
Sure.
it's also really like that's also why it's a big win is because it's so fulfilling at the same time. So yeah, it's hard. People.
Right. You're right. There are two sides of that
Yeah.
medal, so I completely
Yes.
agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Yeah.
Sarah, if anybody who's listening, hopefully everybody
Yeah.
who's listening, needs Kenny, or talk to you maybe about Kenny or
Yeah.
about your experience,
Yeah.
other podcasters, how to find you, how to try Kenny.
Yeah, so luckily we have a free plan now, which is awesome. Like you can really just sign up and just try it out, and you can demo the free plan, the paid plans if you want. Like that's cool. But yeah, the product is really easy to just try, so do that. I think for me, when it comes to reaching out to me, is like I guess I'm on. I don't tweet very much. I'm very bad at tweeting. I'm very bad at tweeting and LinkedIn and stuff like that. But you can reach out to me there, and I can do my best to respond. But I talk to our customers. Like I talk to people who use Canny all the time, which is great. And yeah, I'm around on the internet.
Right. That's how I got you. You know, I just reached out
Perfect. You found me.
on support, right?
Yeah, you
Hey, is
did. Yeah.
Sarah here?
Which like knock knock.
Right?
Yeah, no, it's
Knock knock.
yeah. You can we're a small team, like you can reach the person that you want to reach. Which is also
Yeah, yeah.
interesting.
Not
Like when like if you're looking to join a startup, like address your email to the people who work there. Like don't just like to whom it may concern, like do a little bit of research.
a
Here's
little
a
bit.
tip.
Yes.
If you're looking to be hired by a startup, like look up the people that are working there and address them, right? Like people who say Sarah, Andrew, and team, you know, Canny team even is better, right? Like don't sir ma'am me.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think like
Yeah.
that's a bit
Yeah.
old school, but it still happens, huh?
It happens. It happens. Or like,
Okay.
you know, being a little bit more generic, right? Like you can do a little better than that. Do a little bit of research. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think yeah, that's a great advice. Yeah, be scrappy. I mean, you're joining a startup, so be adventurous. Test your channels.
Yeah.
Twitter
Yeah.
didn't work for me, so you know, I went for support.
Oh, well there you go. Sorry. I try.
That's okay. But yeah, thank you, Sarah. It's been absolutely amazing talking to you. I really hope we can do it again sometime. Maybe after you do your another pricing change.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll stalk you on support again. Or
Sounds good.
now I have your email, right? So there is no going back. But
Perfect.
yeah, thank you for the conversation. It's been great learning about you and Kenny. And yeah, excited to see what else you're going to work on.
Thank you so much, Anna, for having me. I just love having these like, you know, like not scheduled or not, you know, there's no agenda quite like kind of
No
interviews. So
script.
thank you so much for having me. It
Yeah,
was fun to talk.
sure. Thank you and take care.
You too.